boiler has 5 compartments, and one of the compartments is no longer functioning, and they could remove that compartment, giving us 4 compartments. And apparently one of the hot water heaters that we use, the bladder in the hot water heater, is no longer functioning, and so the air which the bladder is supposed to hold has now been compromised by water, so that the bladder in that system is compromised. So here we sit with this information, and the questions we have now are, we have to keep the building going because it's absolutely critical. We can't allow our kids to come in unless we have heat and hot water. So the question becomes, do we throw good money at a program that may not be long-term, that might be bad use of good money? Do we just patch it for now and then take a look at, well, here's what I'm saying. We have been recommended that perhaps we should consider replacing entirely some components of that system as opposed to patching it. We don't have any kind of data to support which is a better decision in terms of some kind of an independent engineering report or independent report. We just have the report from the people who are actually working on the system right now. I believe that the district would be well served and the community would be well served if we had an independent report on all of our mechanical systems, all of our boilers, all of our heaters, that when we run into these things, we can first of all predict in advance where we are in terms of the lifeline and have a better understanding of how to expend finances. Now, I don't know if I've said that as well as I wanted to, but my point is I really do believe this is an important project. Thank you.
And if I could just, before I call on anybody, because some of you now have all spoken once and I haven't spoken yet at all, just from a historical point of view, I don't think they've sat on the shelf and nobody's used them. I know I remember a roof analysis being done at the Griffin School, and we were able to use that. What year was the roof done? How many years did we have left? What was under warranty? And we did use that plan for several years to make sure we replaced the roofs properly. We had a number of analyses done on Griffin. Those are at least 10 years old. We have a middle school that's 35 years old that's never had an analysis done. We have a high school that's now turning 16 that's never had an analysis done. I think that this is good. We've talked for years about wanting to have a capital plan and knowing the life span and life cycle of the things within our buildings. And I think this is an absolute perfect start to getting that plan and making it a reality, because we can talk about it forever, but if we don't start, it's not going to happen. So I know Carrie had her hand up. And then I know Bill had his hand up.
I just would be curious as to whether this is something that's going to be held with the facilities. Is there going to be a team or a committee involved? My concern is if one person spearheading if that person leaves or gets overwhelmed with work, that this could easily become something that is wonderful information that doesn't get utilized. So how would we make sure that this report actually gets utilized? Well, how are we going to make sure we follow through? Because there's no point in having the information if there's not an actual method involved to implement it other than saying we're going to do it. We had a building facilities and management committee under the previous team.
That was more of a...
I was on that, so I actually know what we met.
I felt like we were supposed to rubber stamp what we were told, and I didn't like that. I wouldn't have considered that a true committee.
There was some good information that was coming out of that, but unfortunately, people didn't have the time to do it to the extent here. So that's one of the reasons why I would support that. Knowing that GMS, one of the concerns I would have is, and I wasn't here in town when they had the discussion about replacing GMS. So I know that that's a very sore subject with a lot of people, but there is work that needs to be done to maintain that, and there is truly no plan, no understanding of how, if you were to phase something in and maintenance, what would be an appropriate way to phase it in? Which sections should you hit in which order, how the systems tie in? So if we're not going to replace the building, it does need to be maintained, and somebody needs to get in there to say, what's a logical sequence to do that work? But my concern is that if we don't have a maintenance team, we have a custodial team, how do we make sure that that plan actually gets implemented? What is the mechanism that we plan?
With the board chair's permission, When I've entered into these kinds of tasks in the past, I think one of the key things is to look into the community and find experts in the various areas that we are analyzing. For instance, certainly we could use expertise in terms of the wall structure or general structure of the buildings. We could use expertise in mechanical systems. And I would suggest that it would be very healthy for us to form a committee which would involve community members, perhaps some people sitting here, in the actual discussion and design of the capital plan, and that we would need that expertise in order to do it. And I would agree with the comments made by the member that we do need to have a discussion using this information with other experts that are community experts in order to generate a capital improvement plan that will then have traction, to be quite honest with you. I mean, to be very candid with you, if we could have a budget committee member on this planning process, I believe it would better enable us to bring forward to the Budget Committee recommendations for capital expenditures, because the Budget Committee would have one of their own members on that development and might support us in a little bit more favorable way.
Any further comments?
Other than we've had that discussion in the past when the committee was set up, and that creates a conflict of interest.
Okay, well, then I would look for other people who would be within the community, with the chair's permission. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I would look for other people within the community that have the expertise that we need, and look for recommendations that we could use so that we would have that expertise. But I do think we need an independent, unbiased viewpoint of the system, which we can then bring to that committee and then generate a 5-year plan. And I want to reiterate that is the business administrator's goal for next year, and it is the school board's goal for next year, and it will be implemented as long as I'm your superintendent. Thank you.
Ray, did you have a comment?
I do actually, a question. Well, first, since I'm a kind of a self-taught guy, and I started my humble career in 1978 working for the Lancaster Central School District in their maintenance department. I don't understand what the word fallacious was that you used on Bill. But I can tell you, that a good decision would be to replace the bladder. Don't replace the bladder. Replace the expansion tank in the hot water system that's giving you a problem. Because it will continue to give you a problem if you don't.
Right.
And that's pretty short money in the scope of things.
Yeah.
But my opinion on predictive maintenance plans is they're just that. Unless you're running a very complex facility where you're going to commit to going or replacing that thing, whether it's worn out or not, and in predictive maintenance type decision. Mr. Byron's pretty familiar with those kind of things coming from the pharmaceutical industry. It costs a lot more money than you think, and it's almost impossible to implement. Do you need some overarching goals to understand where your systems are? I will tell you that the walls in none of these buildings are falling down. I will tell you that you probably have some work that could be done on HVAC and some bearings that, if given just a little attention, like a little grease once in a while, would probably last you a lot longer. But I'm still going to vote no on this, because I just think it's, one of those places where if a little common sense would go a lot farther than dollars.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of recommending warrant Article 2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Abstain. All right, can we raise hands for?
Look at that.
And opposed. So it passes. Are we 8 tonight? Okay, so it passes 5-3. So that is recommended. All right, Article 3.
Shall the Litchfield School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be known as the Technology Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of funding the acquisition and replacement of hardware, software, and other technology equipment, and raise the appropriate and raise and appropriate up to $100,000 to be placed in the fund authorized for use of that amount from the June 30th, 2016 unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st of this year, and to designate the school board as agents to expend.
Second.
All right, it's been moved to recommend and seconded. Discussion?
A question. Fast forward, next year, there's 100,000 in there.
Yeah.
What are examples that money would have to be used? List of examples of
Well, we had a situation at GMS as far as, where switches had to be, not replaced, added, because there was basically like no memory whatsoever, or no space available whatsoever. And it was an emergency because it couldn't be, the system was basically shutting down. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, you recall offhand how much that was, Frank?
We actually took the money out
Of the E-fund, which there's basically nothing left from that. It was around 30.
I think we first started looking at low 20s, but it ended up to be about 27, 28,000.
What school did you put a $27,000
GMS.
switch in?
GMS.
Are you kidding me?
It wasn't just the switch. Again, I would defer to the IT individual. He came to us, and he came to the board with a rather detailed rationale for needing the funds. I believe it was more than a switch.
That was a part of it.
I have a basic question in what we're trying to do with this fund, because I thought that the intent was to build it up to such that we could, as we get our replacements coming in, we could just fund it out of the reserve, which said I wouldn't be spending this 100,000 maybe next year. I might wait and build it up to 200 or 300, or is the intent to go in every year? That I don't understand how we're planning on using this fund. Okay.
If I might,
Yes.
yeah. My experience with this fund, this type of a fund, is that we lost a complete heating system in one of my elementary schools in a different district in the middle of winter, and we used the fund to completely rebuild the boilers and the circulators. We've also, in my previous district, used it for a roof that was failing.
This is just computers.
Yeah, this is the technology
This is
one.
technology.
This is the technology
Oh,
one.
I apologize to you.
Because
I'm on the
when
wrong,
we
I'm
had
on the
the-
wrong page. I'm on the wrong page, my
When we had the
apologies.
discussion, it was, gee, we know we're going to have these obligations coming up in future, maybe we should get a reserve
My
fund set up
apologies.
to handle them. And so I'm trying to understand if that's what this is, the intent of this is, and if so, what the process will be on it. Because $100,000 won't satisfy that need, I don't think.
My apologies.
So, but I'm back in, so
Yeah,
what is the intent of this?
If I may, Madam Chair, I believe, Bill, you're correct. I think the discussion that we had at the budget committee level and came back to the school board was to ultimately be able to take that 5-year plan of the IT and have it supported by the capital reserve fund. So I think the board's intent was to begin that process because we are still working on the 5-year plan, as you heard when the Director Pelletier was in, that to give him, he's still developing. He took over a plan that honestly has gone through a lot of revisions since he's come on board. We've had a lot of upgrades, and the one-on-one computing took a lot of the resources as well. So I think the overall objective of establishing this capital reserve fund was to take it out of the general
Budget,
fund, if you
yeah.
will, so that it would be a constant. We would know in the 5-year plan that we could go to that, and if whatever the funds were needed for each year of that 5-year plan, we would have those monies set aside in the capital reserve fund. So I think ultimately that is the goal with that. I think, a lot of times we look at capital reserve funds as the emergency fund.
Yeah.
I think this one was intended to be so that we wouldn't have these big flumes, if you will, of budget increases for the IT.
That's what I thought.
We would installment plan, if you will, and fund
So
it
the
through
intent would be,
credit.
if we establish this next year, we wouldn't be planning on touching it the following year. We'd really look to build this up to an adequate amount.
To where once the adoption of the 5-year plan took place,
Yeah,
then we would be funding that plan through the capital reserve plan.
Yeah.
So that we basically are taking it out of, the support of general fund into this itemized in
Right.
capital reserve fund. I think the board wanted that to be ultimate.
so to carry it forward, then, if this does get funded 100,000, then we would expect the following year, you'd have an article to add another 100,000 into it.
Correct.
Right.
That's
Okay,
correct.
until you build it up. And that's all I want to know.
And then you would-
The goal would be that fund would
Yeah.
be equal to the cost of that 5-year plan, and then as it gets paid down, then obviously.
And then we
it's a
replace it as we
revolving-
pay it down.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you see the
That's what I
technology.
thought it was.
Right, you see a technology budget lowered down like you were
Yeah,
talking
that's what I
about.
thought the intent was.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different from the capital reserve fund for the buildings and for special ed, where
Right.
that is really a set aside for unanticipated.
Right.
Correct. That's right, you're right.
Carrie?
So Brian answered one of my questions. I mean, we've already have a very significant increase in our technology budget this year. So what you're saying is, if we instituted this fund, then you would expect that that increase would would go the other way eventually?
Correct.
Because everything would come out. But we don't have a 5-year plan, so we don't know what that amount should be, correct?
But I can tell you.
It's more than
Almost
100,000.
certainly it's gonna be more than $100,000 when it's finally adopted.
But, see, one of the things I have about the technology things, we haven't even asked the voters if this is a way they want to go. We're just assuming everybody wants to do one-to-one. We're assuming everybody thinks, and yet we have studies showing how kids are being adversely affected by the amount of screen time they have. So is it something that the voters truly want to begin with? So I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. Because it's, do the voters even want to go this way?
The horse is out.
In what respect?
The horse is out.
But not, why do we, me personally, I don't support.
We know we're gonna have to replace the technology.
Right, but the goal is to be able to transition completely to one-to-one computing with every kid having a tablet and a laptop. And we don't even know if the voters want to go that way. I know, until we ask the voters if this is a service that we want to provide, then how can we plan that way?
My argument to that would be, if it was in the operating budget, the voters don't get a chance to vote on it then either.
Well, I would argue that we should be stripping it out and making it warrants.
And the plan isn't developed yet, so maybe one-on-one is in it, maybe it's not. It hasn't been developed yet, so I don't think we can make a judgment on
Right.
it. This is the beginning
It goes
process
walls.
of building up.
And to me, that's the reason I'm not going to support it, because I don't know what it's going to be fully used for. It's not defined, there's no plan. I have a problem asking for voters to fund something that we don't even know what we're funding.
Well, we already have over $100,000 worth of technology in the 3 schools, so certainly,
But they
this
don't
is,
have to
this
all
is just
fail
the
at once.
beginning. No, it's not that it's gonna fail at once, but at some point, all of it's gonna fail eventually, and so that's why you have a plan.
But we don't have a
This
plan.
is-
We just
this
have a
isn't
blank
failure,
check.
This is technology
Yeah.
evolution.
Advanced.
We update phones every 2 years, I mean. it's-
Then we should have a
they
plan.
Become obsolete.
All right, let's, Chris, and then I'll do Ray.
First, I gotta say, this hand raising thing is cool. I haven't done this since the 3rd grade.
Both of them go like
So,
this.
even when I got older, I kind of even ignored the hand raising thing, and I just spoke out.
This surprises all of us.
But are we having a problem funding? I mean, when technology comes this way, this board, the Budget Committee, has always, pretty much, haven't we recommended to, right?
I think it was Bill who made the point this year that as far as the technology, it was either Bill or Ray, that our budget is going up and up and up. So it's a matter of trying to maintain the budget, but there's a need for those monies to get the technology and continue technology. Like Dan was just saying, phones are obsolete up to 2 years. Actually, they're obsolete even less than that, but you have a 2-year plan, so that's why you wait 2 years. Otherwise, you'd be getting a new phone every 6 months.
Now I have, there's 2 issues, and so we discussed one thing, like, for example, if there's 100,000 in it, it's an extra 100,000 sitting there, so it could easily be pulled out. I mean, like you said, you need a switch, hey, grab it from there, so now it's, $74,000, and then you let 100 in next year. It's supposed to build up for what you really need it for, but a phone system goes, you pull another 30,000. So it's, when money is kind of like sitting on the side, it's a little easier to use. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no on this. Now, if the other reason, which is to build up, I'm still going to vote no, because I don't, that's a philosophical thing with me. All that does is that's the game of just leveling out spikes in the taxes. And I just don't believe in that. I believe in funding. So, and that's why I thought, again, I'm a guy that doesn't know much about technology, and I admit it every year. But when I listen to what's going on in the room, I've always voted to recommend what's in the technology budget, because it makes sense and it is necessary. And I could see everybody else here continuing to do that. Now, so the only point of this would be is if 1 year you need a bunch of stuff and it's going to raise the technology budget a little higher. But I'm okay with that. And I think the voters would be too, but I understand the fear from the end, because if the budget goes up high 1 year, it might get voted down because the voters get spooked.
Well, that's exactly what happened, Chris. I mean, we can go to our IT director and say, listen, next year, put in your budget what you need, what we need to do to bring us up to where we need to be. he's gonna come in with a budget about 750,000, probably more than what his budget is this year. And that's what would happen. And you talk about a spike, that's exactly what would happen. So instead of doing that, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what Bill had talked about as far as doing, is building up a fund and then bringing down the technology budget, so it's a much smoother
And
transition.
that philosophy could be used in also many other parts of the budget too, because other things, there's spikes, whether it be for some maintenance or for some, I mean, so it could be across the board. I'm just against it on a philosophical level. If this was, and also because it's too easy to pull that money out, so it's not defined. I mean, you go back to like the fire alarm panel, and so it's too easy to just say, hey, look, we're putting this money aside for this, but this came up, the money's there, let's just use it. That's why I'm gonna vote to not recommend this one.
Ray?
I personally going to vote no as well. I'd rather see this in the budget, and the reason I'd rather see it in the budget is, you guys, if you have a 5-year plan, you can budget a 5-year plan. But I will tell you right now, I'm going to ask you, one of those times, I'm going to ask another question. Anybody sitting around this table ever heard of Intel's Compute Stick yet?
Is it a what?
It's called Compute Stick.
Got like a pogo stick?
It's a complete computer, $119 with a Windows 10 operating system. You plug it into an HDMI display, you can use it for a thin client or a regular computer, run Windows on it. Short money. The price of technology, in case no one's noticed, is falling at an alarming rate. And the fact that you get a new phone every 2 years is because everybody wants the cool new bells and whistles, but honest to God, a smartphone today still does only a few things. It can connect you to the interwebs, it can make a phone call, and it can run an application. And I will tell you and challenge you that if you can prove to me it does anything since its inception other than that, maybe take pictures better. But technology prices are falling. I'd rather see it in the budget so it comes up as a conversation with people that understand the other side and the ramifications, rather than single-sided people making decisions. So I'm not going to support it for that reason. I'd rather have the conversation here, and I will support technology in the budget and have.
I agree with the conversation also. It puts the decision-making in more hands as opposed to less, and all of these capital reserve funds just puts the decision-making into very few hands with no discussion.
I already figured that.
Superintendent?
I just, a point of clarification, the one-on-one computer for this current iteration, the computers were actually purchased by the parents, just as a point of clarification.
Yep, my granddaughter is in that program because I
Thank you.
told my daughter she had to be, and of course, you know where that money came from.
Did you get the best deal out there, though? That's what I want to ask.
Yeah, it was the worst deal out there because it was a
Frank?
Chromebook.
Frank, did you have a
So I just want
comment?
to make sure, this committee is all agree, is generally agreed that they're going to support it in the budget.
Support in the budget.
Okay.
And we support technology in the budget.
We haven't
and
voted
have.
yet.
So here's my concern, because I
I'll
know.
wait till I get to that point, and I'll remind you that you said you'd support it in the budget. Well,
So
we-
here's my concern, and we had this discussion a little bit when we actually did the IT budget, and it was Bill who made the suggestion that it would make sense to have a capital reserve fund. The problem, again, going back historically, we have a great plan, and it designates each year what's going to be funded, what's going to go in the budget, and invariably, something happens. We lose $2 million in state aid, something happens, and now we can't fund that budget, so we fund half of that year, we fund a little bit of the year, now we're behind, and next year, well, now it's double, but we can't do double, so we fall behind. So that is my concern is, yeah, maybe we should put it in the budget, but when you have a plan and you try to put it in the budget, you never get past year one. Something happens to disturb that funding flow, and now your 5-year plan now costs you even more. So I do like the idea when Bill brought it up. I do like the idea of the capital reserve fund so that you know every year, so you're setting aside, assumedly, if it's available in unreserved funds, and you avoid that. You now have a plan that's actually going to take 5 years, and you've got the funds set aside to do it without a huge impact on the budget should we lose state funding and whatever happens year to year. Carrie?
But I would argue then that would be a reason to put a warrant article with a 5-year plan. Year 1 is going to cost $100,000. Year 2 is going to cost another $125,000. Year 3 is going to, and you could commit it in that way.
Because this could pass 2 out of 5 years or something if you're gonna try to insert it.
So,
Or there
but-
could be no money to even go in it.
But
the end
even,
of the
so, if you had a warrant article, it'd be no different than like a contract with the teachers union. Year 1 impact, year 2 impact, year 3 impact, 4 and 5. And now you're guaranteed the money because it's been approved.
That's a good
There's a
point.
clear plan. To me, without a plan, it's, I don't like doing anything without a plan, and here, there is no plan. So, to me, it's just a very simple thing, put a warrant article with a 5-year plan, 5-year impact, done.
And that is a great thought, to put if you got a 5-year known for a lease or whatever, put it on a warrant, and the money is guaranteed.
To the chair, a point to your concept, I could support that too on my end. If once you agreed that we have a 5-year plan in the IT, that the warrant articles would not be out of unreserved fund, but actually appropriated funds.
I would actually support that.
Okay.
Assuming I supported the IT plan. I'm not guaranteeing my support for the IT plan as written, but I support the idea of
Well,
putting it as a warrant
The IT
article.
plan would come from the board as a plan
Right.
adopted by the school
So-
board.
Correct. I support the idea of it. I'm just saying my support for it going through a warrant article is not an implicit support for the plan itself. So I believe that it should be a warrant article with a 5-year impact. Appropriations is fine because
Appropriate
people.
not through unreserved fund
Yep,
balance. or
because people
taxation.
should understand how much that's gonna cost. And I think
I
that.
can live with that.
And
I don't agree with not supporting it this year, but if the compromise is, we come back next year with an adopted, school board adopted 5-year IT plan supported by this committee through funding over a 5-year period, not relying on unreserved capital reserve, unassigned funds, and we'll guarantee the funding with the support of this committee and the voters' goodwill on a 5-year. I mean, that seems reasonable to me. I can't speak for the board or the superintendent, that's me, finance guy.
I think what you just described would be very difficult to get through.
I do too.
And
It still doesn't guarantee
it'll only be
funding.
binding for 1 year anyway,
It still doesn't guarantee the funding.
not at all.
To me, we're almost in a better position through the trend of the unassigned fund balance to get more money into that account over a 5-year period than we would based on the wish of the voters over a 5-year period. But again, I'm trying to find out.
But, I think I don't think that's accurate though, because when we've put together the warrant articles, we put together warrant articles for a tech director. And we put the lab in the operating budget. We ended up with a director with no lab because people had the choice to support it. They knew what they were supporting. And I think if we put forth a true 5-year plan that people could understand, see what they're supporting, you'd get the support. Perhaps not everybody, because like I said, I'm not committing that I would support it. But people who support it the town would most likely support it because they would know what they're paying for. And yes, it puts more work to the school board to sell the plan, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think people should know what they're getting.
Well, you keep talking about a 5-year plan and selling a 5-year plan. All you can sell is 1 year. That's all you can sell.
But
You can't sell 5 years.
But you could commit if we're doing a 5-year plan and you understand, why not? Then what's the point of a 5-year plan?
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so this
Each-
could
each-
pass 2
each-
out of 5 years.
Each year will come up separately and be voted on separately.
Right.
And at the current rate of
It's just
technology, I
like
mean,
the maintenance plan you're gonna try and develop under this original one. It's gonna come up and 5-year plan, and it ain't gonna be voted on that way. So, but we've already settled that one.
Thank you.
Right.
But
at
it's
the rate of
the same thing.
technology these days, there's no such thing as a 5-year plan. We know we're gonna switch data, we know we're gonna store data, we're gonna have servers to do that. I mean, other than the one-to-one computing initiative, they already know what that is. I mean, at this point, all they have to do is schedule out their break-fix stuff, have a little money on the side if something that does fail out of their systems to replace, because it's really at that point. And I'd be really curious to understand what the costs were at GMS for $27,000.
Right, we would like to be at that point too. Unfortunately, the Department of Education requires that we as a public school district have an adopted 5-year.
I understand that point.
So, to simplify it would be great. I mean, life would be a lot easier, I guess, for a lot
No,
of us
and
in public.
like I said, I do understand that you have to do that for a 5-year plan, but today the Consumer Electronics Show is going on in
And I
Las
totally
Vegas,
agree
and
with that.
tomorrow the world will
Yep.
change, right?
Right.
But
But you're not
it's moving fast.
You're not gonna specify which machine you're using in 5 years, just that you need 30 machines.
Yeah.
And
You don't
so,
know if you need 30 machines in 5 years.
So
You
a
don't.
year ago, 30 machines would have been $600 apiece, unless you did VDI, and then between software licenses and other licenses, it'd be $600 apiece. You got Intel coming into the market with $119. That's the operating system. If you bought Windows 10 license today, it's $109. So for $9 roughly, or $10, you're getting the hardware. That's what's happening. It's, you're seeing the whole thing implode down price-wise. So what they have in the budget, and as they move forward with their plan, it will be manageable. It's not gonna be the same quantum leaps that we've had in the last 10.
Superintendent?
Thank you.
That's what I do.
I think there's a lot of wisdom that's been expressed here. I certainly understand that each budget is an annual budget, and I understand that people change, boards change, support changes. At the same time, I think it's important that we at least have a vision of where we want to be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years out, so that we can work in that direction, given that there will be challenges as we move forward. So I think having a 3-year plan for technology, I think a 5-year plan is a bit far out, to be candid. I think a 3-year plan is a good idea. It will change, too. In terms of reducing prices of technology, that's a pretty clear trend that's going on for the last 20 years, I would suggest, and I'm not a technology person. So I think what we're saying to you is, we would like to suggest that having some money available for technology would be our preference. We certainly need to bring a more detailed 3 to 5 year plan to you to review, but we do understand that every year is a new year. Thank you very much.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending warrant Article 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain. So I believe that's passes 5-3.
You change your mind.
Wow, I've always supported technology and infrastructure, so.
All right, moving on to Article 4.
Article 4, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise the appropriate up to $100,000
That's the
to be added to the Special Education Capital Reserve Fund established in 2004, and authorize the use of that amount from the June 30th unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st of this year, and to designate the school board as agents to expend.
Second,
It's been made and seconded. Bill?
I'd like to know why you want to put $100,000 into a reserve fund that doesn't exist.
Why we want to?
Yeah, a reserve fund that doesn't exist. There was no reserve fund established in 2004.
I'm not aware of.
I'm telling you, it wasn't. It was voted down.
We have a special
The
education.
wrong year, Cindy. It's 2005 when they established it.
So we need to make that change.
that's why it's a
I
draft.
brought that up last year.
I was not here. So thank
Okay.
you again for reiterating it.
So now that we got that out of the way,
So let me correct myself, 2005.
what's the balance now?
It's approximately 103,000
103? Okay. And you want to make it 200,000?
this year, yes.
And that's why?
Does the board chair want to respond?
Well, each year we come to you with our SpEd budget, and each year you say, well, you keep putting in monies, go ahead.
It's capital reserve, this isn't SpEd. Have I got the wrong one? I'm sorry,
Special ed.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
You and Jim on,
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong
I had
article.
the same
I
subject.
did it. Article 5 is the one. Okay,
yeah, really, you guys ought to sit next to each other.
okay.
But
Leave it the way it is. Okay, 103.
So
Okay,
is 2005 correct, or is it 2004?
so why do you feel you have to have another 100,000 to a fund we never had to touch?
Because I think what we want to do is start looking at the budgets the way you keep telling us we should have the budget, is not the what-ifs, but the what-is,
Okay,
and then have that reserved so that, for the what-ifs.
okay,
Because as we all know, the what-ifs can be extremely costly. You have a student that comes in,
yeah,
that could take care of your reserve fund.
okay. But let's say there is $200,000 in there.
Yep.
How would you have changed this year's budget if it had $200,000 in there right now? What would you have reduced?
Well, you already reduced it.
No, what would you have reduced other than what we've already reduced?
I'd have to look at the budget.
Well,
I'm not certain if I would have reduced anything in this year's budget.
then there's no rationale to what you just said. You wouldn't change the budget because the reserve fund is another $100,000 higher.
Well, I'd go back to the budget, it's see if there is something that I could change.
But it would be out of tuition and transportation, and I don't think you would take another $100,000 out of that. I just don't think your argument is correct. Okay?
I think Frank has some thoughts.
Well, I'll defer.
No?
Frank, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be glad to go. I think the point is that, I think historically in special ed, we've always had to plan for the what-if. And in the budget, for instance, what if, we have a what-if with regards to a student has to have a placement for $160,000. If we had a $200,000 reserve fund that we knew we could expend on an annualized basis, we would have that to expend. Number two, I think within the course of a year, we can't predict how many placements we're going to have. And I realize that you've looked at the placements over the last 5 years and over the SpEd budget for the last 5 years, but we're always concerned, because of the cost of special ed placements, that we would have money in the budget to expend. We do not want to overexpend the budget because the method of getting monies into your budget once you've overexpended is onerous. It's taking money from the next sequential year's budget. And then that means you're starting off on the whole the next sequential year. So I think the point is, to me at least, it would allow both the special ed director and the business administrator and the superintendent and the school board the opportunity to perhaps be more restrictive in terms of the thinking going into the special ed budget about what if we have this or what if we didn't have this. So I mean, I think it's just a mind change, a mental change in terms of special ed. I've been doing special ed budgets for 17, 18 years now, and my biggest concern is there's no way I can predict 18 months out what's going to happen in special ed. I've always felt you have to have a bit of a buffer in special ed to make sure that if you get placements you hadn't anticipated, that you have the money for them. And then if you don't have that money, as I believe with the exception as you had mentioned last year, which I can't validate, the board has returned that money to the taxpayers.
They returned everything.
Okay.
I was incorrect.
So I think if you look back at the historic piece, although we may have over-budgeted,
Sorry.
we have returned all of that money to the taxpayers for taxpayer relief, and I don't think that would change, but it would allow us to have a different mindset, to be quite honest.
Okay, but I don't see where another $100,000 in this reserve fund would change at all the way you prepare the SpEd budget and how it's prepared. Just don't see any change happening, because it's done every year the same way by the same people. And I don't, and every year, there's money left over in the SpEd budget. Okay, so I don't buy your argument there. Just don't buy
But
it.
with the fund, it will be done differently.
How? Would you now say, I'm not going to fund $100,000 tuition, even though I haven't anticipated one here that I think I know about? Would you do that? I don't think you would. Don't believe you would.
Well,
And then I'll get to Chris.
no, please go in the sequence that you had, Madam
If I can just stay on Bill, because
When you have an opportunity.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
make sure the Bill's questions are answered, and then we'll
Yeah.
move on.
if I can just,
I didn't yield all my time to the superintendent, if I may, Madam Chair.
We're being extra polite tonight. What's going on?
Just to be more specific, I'm just
Everybody
looking
take a
at, the special services budget did have a placeholder of $150,000 for a potential
Yeah.
out-of-district tuition, and I think I can speak for the superintendent, having gone through this. We more than likely would have omitted that from the requested budget presented to the school board if in fact we knew the safety net was sufficient to cover that, because I cannot put it on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the probability of that tuition placement. And I will remind the board, in the committee, I'm sorry, that a lot of these decisions, other than the move-ins that occur during the summer months, aren't made until the spring, when IEP reviews are typically conducted. Now, is this a current student who potentially may be out of district tuition? I don't know, because I don't have that specific. But I can tell you, with some certainty of working with the superintendent this year, I think our mutual request to the director of SpEd would have been to remove that, if we knew in fact we had those.
We cut that.
Chris?
To expand on what Bill said, I don't think, maybe to be one anecdote where you might, but I don't think the practices or the budgeting process would change if there was another $100,000 in here. But to further expand on that, I don't think you should even change it, because it's working. What they're doing, and then coming to this committee and the discussions, it seems to be working. So I'm guessing, I'm gonna go one step further and say, would you be able to change the way you budget if there was another $100,000? In the big scheme of things, $100,000 is not a lot of money. So I wouldn't recommend you guys changing anything you're doing, because I think what is being done now every year is working. It's a tight budget. How many years has that money been in there? The $103,000, $3,000 is probably interest, because we've never touched it. We've never needed it. So it's working. And as for the argument, the other $100,000, you could say, well, then is that enough? I mean, all of these years, 100,000 there was enough, now 200. What's to say, what if you have two out of placement, then it's 300,000 or 400,000? I'm gonna vote no on this for that reason.
What this will do, will enable us to present a budget that at the end of the year, instead of turning around and giving you $250,000 back, we'll be giving you nothing back, because the budget will be brought down to those levels. If I can just go back to, like Bill made a comment, so I just want to make sure that I was clear on what you said, because you kind of like just said it in passing.
No, I went back and I looked afterwards, and...
Okay, well, no, I just want to clarify for everyone who's listening also, because the superintendent made the comment, and I have in the past also, that we give back every penny.
You did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at one of the last meetings, you said that we did not.
I know that,
Okay,
and I would more than willingly
Thank you.
explain that to you.
okay.
Okay? I think you wound up giving back $29,000 that was not SpEd money,
Correct,
and the rest of it was SpEd money.
correct.
And that allowed you to take care of the $150,000 that you had to pay.
So again, going back to that SpEd money, how much did we give back last year?
Over $400,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So rather than doing that, the budget would come in a more realistic number.
Well, it also tells you don't have to worry about any new students coming in, okay? Because you always have that, have that. But
Right, but you had talked about not having it there. You would prefer no what-ifs, right?
All
we'll
right.
talk at deliberative.
Carrie?
Again, my question would be, when was the last time we actually tapped the reserve fund? Well,
Never.
so we've never tapped the reserve fund.
No, what we've done is we've turned back and given back approximately $300,000 from the SpEd budget.
Okay. And I know you're citing that 150,000, and I know we've cut that already. So, because we felt that there was an adequate reserve fund, and it actually was cut pretty significantly. I don't know that there would be any different philosophy. And what's to say that we don't end up with people here on the board later that says, yeah, we have 200,000, but we're still not comfortable with that, so let's put a little more cushion anyway in the budget. It all depends, the people in the room here might be okay with 200 and then we'll go a little tighter, but that's not a long-term solution, because you don't know who's gonna be on the board in the future. The system's been working, we've never had to tap the reserve fund, and to me, that alone is an argument that we don't need a bigger reserve fund. If we've never needed to touch it, then there's no need to add to it. What we have is working.
If I might, I would agree with the BA, and I didn't maybe express myself as well. I do believe this year, if we had a $200,000 reserve fund, that the superintendent would have cut that $160,000 in anticipated placements with the idea that we already had that covered with the reserve fund. So thank you.
And we wouldn't have cut it as we did, so we effectively already did that reduction for you. Okay?
Because isn't that a student?
But you
For that
didn't
very
provide,
reason.
But now if we have
provide us
that-
with the safety of.
But now if we have that placement that comes up, we're $60,000 upside down.
You got $100,000 sitting there.
We're still
And-
$60,000
$60,000
upside
short.
down.
I think there might be a placement that goes out. I mean, we have the
I
conversation
understand.
every year.
And remember, this is the SpEd budget,
Right.
not just the
Right.
tuition,
There's a lot
not
of
just the
ifs
bus.
in
It's a
SpEd.
Right.
big budget
Bigger.
on the
Big
run.
items together.
Not just this piece of it, the rest of it on the
I think
run.
everybody knows how we're voting, right?
I'm not going to talk anymore, but thank you very much.
And you're gonna be gone another year. Somebody else is gonna be here, maybe with a different philosophy.
You're all sitting here saying, thank God he's gonna be gone another year.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
Haven't reached that thing yet. We gotta get through the deliberative session first.
I don't know why didn't
Any
Dennis
other-
superintendent in a long time.
Any other discussion? Just quickly, I wouldn't have said in the past that I thought 100,000 was enough. But after 20 years' experience, this has only been around for 11 years, but 20 years' experience in looking and dealing with special ed, except for 1 year that I can remember, there's always been money turned back. So I think if there could be a change in philosophy of how you budget for special ed and look at the percentage used in the past, and I'm not even sure, because potential students are actual students, you just don't know if the out-of-district placement is gonna be approved or not. I'm not sure it would be right to change the philosophy at the school board level. So I think that adding another 100,000 is not gonna serve the purpose that you want. So that's just my 2 cents. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending Article 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All those abstained. Mr. Byron, I didn't hear. You were, okay.
I
So.
didn't say nay.
So it fails to 6-0. And here's another one of those, does that mean it's not recommended or recommended, or?
Not recommended by the budget committee. It's not. The same way this is
You see how it's
going
written?
forever.
That's the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, the way it's been working forever. I'm more
Keep
confused
in mind,
about the fact that
This
we're
is just,
thinking about
this is just a
changing.
draft, so we can change it later.
the same ballot for like
Yeah.
eons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it all of a sudden an issue?
Yeah, I don't know.
You need to have a clear-cut declaration. It's not recommended, and a vote with it. And the problem is, your vote is backwards. Your vote shows that not recommended fails. I don't know why that's so hard to understand.
That's what people understand.
It is not what people understand.
All right, we'll get to that later on. We'll leave it for now. If we're going to change, if we decide we need to change things, we have next, after the hearing, we can choose to do
Article
that.
5.
Article 5.
Article 5.
Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise the appropriation up to $50,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2004?
2005.
Thank you. So going back up to the top one, was it 2004, 2005?
No, our top one was correct. I was wrong on that. That's when I was talking
Well, we're on the
about.
last one, you guys both can be on.
We're both old.
That's what honor about,
Somewhere around.
somewhere around approximately.
Yeah. Again, established in 2005 and authorized the use of the amount from the June 30th unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st of this year, and to designate the school board as the agents to expend.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Discussion on Article 5?
Yeah, what is the current balance?
Around 51,000.
51.
My question is, let's assume all of these pass, and there's only $80,000 in leftover funds.
Goes in order.
In order,
Well, that's
so the
under
first
order.
one gets
Yep.
fully funded and nothing in the rest?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no proration. In other words, it would go in order of the warrants, taking the full amount until there's nothing left over.
So if they all pass and there's no money in the unreserved fund,
So in effect, this is your order of priority also?
correct.
So this is not your priority then? Because you put this one last?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
See, I would think that, in my opinion, that should be the biggest priority.
It'd be ahead of number 1 anyways.
Right, I would think so.
Well, that's different.
Any
But-
further discussion?
So where did we come up with 50 grand? What's driving that number? Why another 50 grand?
Well,
Or
we
40.
really wanted to beat a lot more, but we went 50.
So we picked a number out of a hat, or is there actually a reason behind it?
There was a reason behind it.
Could you please explain?
We thought $50,000 was enough to ask for this year.
All right, is there a piece of equipment that we're concerned that would run $100,000, or, I guess, do
A
we have?
roof?
Well, a roof could be babied along until you could get a vote. I mean, is there a roof, we had a roof repair not too long ago.
You
Is
just
there-
asked if there's a piece of equipment that can be more than 50,000. There you go, a roof.
This is where you have a failure.
Huh?
Okay. Roof, you can patch and then fix next year, but you're talking about something else that would.
I'm talking, are we looking at a boiler? or- like- Go ahead.
I'm waiting.
Oh.
Thank you, I appreciate your, if I may, just tell, I'm not gonna debate again the merit of us in needing a capital reserve plan, because again, we don't know, right? Because we lack, we're very reactionary as to what we may or may not need from, not just from one year, from 1 week to the next. I will tell you, the superintendent earlier had made some reference to the issues that we've been experiencing here at Camden. To the extent that we have a town boiler, we have an expansion tank that needs to replace, hot water holding tank that needs to replace, we've got switches that aren't working, that are gummed up, we've got backflow. We're probably, and I'm just guessing at this, I would say that we'll probably kind of come in close, now this is a gross figure, because we may have some insurance ability to collect some dollars on this, but we're probably gonna come in around the $50,000 mark. So, and that was not planned
Right.
up until New Year's Eve day. So, it's our best guess, if you will, if something, and I would consider this, the superintendent labeled it a crisis, and it is, catastrophic failure at a number of components of our heating and hot water system. So, something a week ago that we did not plan expending, we will not take it right out of the capital reserve fund by accounting. We will keep it as an expenditure in the general fund until the very end of the year to see if we do in fact need to tap into capital reserve.
Would that not be something we could encumber funds for, without going into a capital reserve fund?
Say that again?
We're gonna-
Could we not just, could we have unexpended funds, could we not encumber funds?
You can't do that unless you have some type of
Specific,
We need a
specific
contract.
Oh, really?
Need a contract.
yep.
How do we do the track without that? That's it. All right,
Until we get an estimate, like it's just starting to come in now, we will start encumbering from POs to the general fund because we cannot wait.
right.
And it more than likely is going to far exceed the appropriation for equipment replacement that we have for the CHS budget. It will, I can guarantee you it will.
Love to see this system.
Frank, first of all, I'd say I applaud how you're handling this and trying to take it out of the operating budget first. The only time we dipped into this was at LMS when the fire alarm system, and they immediately went to the reserve fund rather than waiting, and then at the end of the year, we wound up with a fund balance they could have paid for right on the bat. So that's the way to do it.
All right, and my only comment is echoing, I forget who said it, that this would be the first of the capital reserve funds that I would fund before the other ones, so if you can feel so inclined to play around with the order of them.
Well, the other ones may not make it.
That would be my concern, is that you wouldn't even have enough for Article 3 and then not fund anything else, so I would put the.
I voted no on 1, I'd probably vote yes on 5, I mean.
And then they still, the school board could still switch them around.
That's what I'm saying, and if, my only comment is that I would switch them around,
Because
so.
I think so too, that should be the most important. That covers the most.
All right, if there's no further discussion,
Would you make it 100?
No.
We
are gonna make it, you are gonna make it 100. You are going to make it 100. You're gonna make it 101.
all right, all those in favor of supporting Article 5 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
Wow.
So that, 800, recommended.
If I might, just not looking for an answer right now, but philosophically, as we develop our 3 to 5 year capital plan, and we specify how much money we're going to need in that plan, we may have years where it may be $150,000, $200,000 for that particular year. And I don't need an answer to this right now, and certainly it's a board's purview. But would you prefer, philosophically, to have a capital reserve fund that's reflective of the 5-year capital plan, or would we philosophically prefer to have that part of the operational budget on an annualized basis? And I think that's a philosophical question that we're going to have to answer next year. No, not looking for anything right now.
I like operations.
You get the answer now.
All right.
Yeah,
Here's two.
Yeah, I can give my answer.
No, I'm not.
All right, so, moving on now to final votes. Michelle and I both had the same thought, using the sheet that we've been working with, she and I, on keeping track of the changes in the budget. However, I like hers better because she left a column for us to write in. So we're going to use the one Michelle developed.
Does Michelle have another one of those for the
Yes, I do.
tardy person?
Yes, I do. Here you go, sir.
Thank you very much.
Keep track of those votes.
Michelle, Michelle, you get another copy?
No, I have another copy. Do you need one? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
No, that's okay. I'll give you one because I gave one to the superintendent. I know, you count on me. I know, he counts on me.
Do you need one?
Or when I get my business card, I'll give you a copy.
All set.
No, all set, thanks, Jen. Sit on that one.
All right, so, we start at the top with special services. And I don't know if we want to do what we did last night, and Brian, you start by making the motion to approve the bottom line that the budget committee has right now, or if you want one of us to do that, because obviously some of these are not your bottom line anymore.
I'm not sure if any of them are on.
Some of them are.
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter,
It's actually our job, I think, Cindy.
okay, well,
You
that's
don't
why,
know?
that's why I want to,
You don't know whose job it is?
that's why I want to ask Brian if he has a preference.
so weren't the
I'd
towns?
say we do it the same way we
Frank
did
did.
last,
Yeah.
what we did last night.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, last night Frank was the one who motioned each of the
They
lines.
weren't his
The bottom
numbers.
line number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't
Was it
motion
last
these.
night?
No,
Not
you-
not
Yeah, you
these.
did.
Yeah,
I didn't motion them the other night.
yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Who did?
Don't think so.
Hey,
It
did.
was not me.
No, it was, most of it was Bill.
Correct.
Made the motion?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
all
true.
right.
Yeah, I was seconding
Okay.
them all, now that I think about that.
Okay, all
To
right.
make her bookkeeping
All right,
easier.
so that, you're off the hook, Brian.
No, last night.
Doesn't matter.
So, all right, then we'll start with special services.
Say
Does
something.
someone want to make a motion to approve $1,216,666?
So made.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to add back into potential out-of-district placement, $150,000.
Okay, there's a motion to add back in $150,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Well, it sounds like you're saying that the way we've been doing our budget right along for special services is working, so why do we need the safety net of $100,000? So I'd like to continue the way we do our budget and put $150,000 back in.
Well, I think what we said was, the school board isn't going to change their method. The budget committee's still going to take a percentage out based on history.
No, But I believe the board said that the way we've been doing our SpEd budget has been working out very well. I believe you said it yourself.
Yep.
That's collective.
So,
Yeah, I could, right. I said the system
300
is working,
Gonna be long.
and
Well, the
which means,
150,000 was part of the system.
right, it was, and then this group was part of the system, and what came out of this group, the process was the bottom line number on this page, and that's the system that's been working year after year after year after year after year. And also, I think every year too, whoever was sitting in your seat representing the school board always said, well, what if that happens, there's never enough, what if we get in trouble, and it never happened. So I still stand by that the system's working. I know when Mr. Byron, made the clarification that this was coming, but I was prepared for it. I think it's fine, and I don't see any reason to add any money back in. The bottom line here, it works for me.
Just because I was mentioned in the soliloquy by the past speaker, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about, that I had mentioned this is coming. I have no idea what motions the school board is going to make.
Right. Carrie?
Okay.
I would ask, do we know of another student? Because the 150 that was originally in, a good chunk of it's still in there. So this would ultimately increase, this is like adding another student. There was 150 in there, because that was worst-case scenario. We brought it back down to fund it to pretty much our maximum out of district. So there's still money in there for that placement. So now you're essentially adding a second placement.
No,
So-
I'm looking at it back in 146,000 has been cut.
No, we,
Yeah,
for that particular placement, we cut 85 to bring it down to the maximum we currently spend. So you're essentially adding a second placement. So there's still money in for that particular placement.
So just to.
So I just want everybody to know, we did not remove money for a placement. We understood that there was a person involved, and we just brought it back to what is more likely to be spent. That's all.
And my comment was, I don't think the board should change how it, and could change how its philosophy of budgeting for special ed, because you have a potential student. I think it's wise that you put that potential student as part of your budget. However, once it gets to the budget committee's philosophy is based on history, and the budget committee is going to continue to use the history to determine a guess at what's going to be left over at the end of the year. So that, just to clarify what I meant, is not that I feel that we should be putting that back in.
Nice try.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the adding 150,000 back into that bottom line signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
No.
Aye. Abstain. So the motion fails to 6-0. So we're back to a bottom line of $1,216,666. Any further discussion? All those in favor of bottom line for special services signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So it passes 6-0.
You recorded that incorrectly. It should be 260.
Wait, I made a motion to approve it, so it should be 6-2, correct?
Yes. So,
I'm just pointing this out because this will come up later.
Oh, for goodness sakes. It's been working.
all right, so,
I make a motion to approve GMS for 128,855. Well, I'm sorry, 121,855.
is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? This is GMS for $121,855. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of that bottom line signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 7-1-0 passes.
Make a motion to approve school board SAU for 102,519.
Is there a second?
Well,
Second.
Sorry, what was the amount?
102,519.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of school board SAU, bottom line for $102,519 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So that passes 6-0.
All right. Make the motion to approve business finance for 57,300.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of business finance for a bottom line of $57,300 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 7-1-0.
Make a motion to approve HR for 11,968.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Wait, hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't find it. What's it under?
HR.
HR, Human Resources? It's
Account number 2830.